Well, hello there, and welcome to episode 70 of the Rock Podcast. FTATPod, we salute you. In this episode, we've got rock news, of course. We've got hidden gems. We've reached the letter W in the A to Z of rock. And we've got some interesting new releases in New Rock on the Block. So, without further ado, here he is. I haven't got anything funny to say about him, but here he is. It's Brian. Hello, Brian. How you doing?
Hello, Matthew. And as ever, I have nothing funny to say back. But I will say, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right, thanks, Brian. Thanks for asking. Yeah, I'm doing all right. In fact, we only saw each other recently, didn't we, at the magnificent Stone Dead Festival at Newark Showground in Nottinghamshire. I think it's Nottinghamshire. There was some debate as to whether it was Nottinghamshire or Lincolnshire, but anyway, it was a fun weekend, wasn't it, Brian?
It was really good. Yeah, we were. The weather was kind to us for most of the weekend, and we saw an eclectic bunch of bands. I have to say, it was. It was interesting. I have a new band which I liked a lot, which was Bonafide. I thought they were a new band to me. I thought they were great. It was a great weekend. Well, as ever, well organized. And if we start at the beginning, the Friday night was excellent. We had Scarlet Rebels, Paul Di'Anno, who I'd never seen before, and he did a full set of early Iron Maiden material, which you had to tell me what most of it was, apart from Phantom of the Opera.
Yep.
And
it was good.
He was, and the Choir Boys, who had two members of Thunder in the lineup, in Luke Morley and Harry James. And Friday's always good. Always seem to get good bands on a Friday, and then the Saturday was good. You'd have loved it. You must have loved the.
I would have loved it if I'd have been there, and I was. In fact, I was there, so I did love it. I we got back to the Choir Boys, and maybe we should call themselves Thunder Boys from now on. Especially as there's some debate around who actually is the Choir Boys, or who's in the Choir Boys these days. But yeah, Luke Morley and Harry James and Nigel Mogg from I think the original lineup, the Choir Boys, and of course Spike. Yeah, the ubiquitous Spike from the Choir Boys was remarkably coherent, actually, wasn't he?
He was very.
For Friday night, although he didn't want to finish. He got a strict curfew, and he almost had to be given the hook, didn't he?
He did.
And then it wasn't help when people started saying, one more song. I didn't think people did that. One more song. And then Paul Anthony, in all his glory, came out and said, one more song, guys, and it's going to be whatever
disco.
It was. Yeah. And then it's disco time. Disco. Saturday was good. Kicked off with one of my favourite bands at the moment, the Hot 1-2.
Yeah.
They were excellent. I mean, they were great. I mean, I was just paid to see them, to be honest with you. Magnificent band from Cambridge. We've talked about them and their debut album, Superbia, which I recommend everyone to go and listen to. I've just blown my hidden gem for this episode. No, we did review that. I think we had that as a hidden gem many episodes ago. Followed by Tail Gunner. That's a good name, isn't it? I feel that they are very much they're named after an Iron Maiden song, and they very much kind of model themselves on early Iron Maiden, don't they? That kind of 84, 85 World Slavery Tour look.
Very much.
And it kind of works. They're so thin. You know how thin they are?
Yeah.
I mean, they were wearing these kind of Lycra type trousers, and I thought, geez. I mean, I'd struggle I'd probably have to get one leg into those trousers. Brilliant. No, good band. And then who else was right? Who else is all right? Bonafide. You liked. You fast forwarded to them because you liked them so much.
I did.
They were good.
They were my band of the day. And Eclipse, who were the Swedish band who I was very much looking forward to see. They were. They were an interesting. It's always pretty good with the Stone Dead Festival, because I do think they try to cater for a number of different genres, and so that to me was the closest you would get to AOR, melodic rock, Eclipse, and they were tremendous. I thought they were really good, and Ugly Kid Joe.
Yeah, yeah, they were good. They were entertaining, weren't they?
They really got the crowd going. And they had that sort of like early evening slot, and the weather turned out nice. Dora Pesh, I don't really know much about Dora Pesh and Warlock. I just remember her being ever present in Kerrang for a number of years. Always pictures of Doro and Warlock, but she came out usually at festivals. Man, I don't know about you. To me, festivals are always a time for you to play a few crowd pleasers and whatever. She didn't half push her new album.
Yeah, she did, didn't she? Yeah, yeah.
She did.
Well, but it was, it was a good set all the same.
Yeah.
In fact, interestingly enough, there was a. I mean, this whole festival is kind of an homage to the old Monsters of Rock, of course, at Donington Park, which ran from 1980 to 1993.
Yeah.
And Doro Pesh, I think in Warlock, was the first ever female performer on stage in 1986.
Yes,
which, when you compare that to obviously the current era, where there's lots of, I mean, we had a female guitarist in Tail Gunner and Doro herself and so on. It sounds strange. 6 years in to the Monsters of Rock, she was the first female performer. I did think there was quite a heavy metal kind of undertone.
Yes,
they were quite metal. Tail Gunner, pretty metal. KK's Priest.
Oof.
Yeah, they were really good. KK Downing, formerly of Judas Priest, and also Tim Owens, he also formerly of Judas Priest, the singer when Rob Halford stepped away for a few years in the late 90s, early 2000s. But they did basically half their set was Priest classics, and it was great for a Priest fan like me. It was magnificent.
Yeah,
and then it was Brian Tatler's band, Brian Tatler's other band, Saxon, closed the festival. Who were magnificent. Their usual finely tuned selves, playing their hits. They did that bit, Bright. Do you remember? They did that bit where they said that we got 3 songs for you to choose from.
Yes.
And I thought, come on, really? You're not telling me you just kind of picked these out of the hat. You haven't even rehearsed them. And they did the Eagle Has Landed out of the selection, which is a killer song.
Yeah, but I remember because you had a choice. I remember, I don't know what the third song was, but I could remember the choice was, right, audience, you can choose Sacrifice, which is a song I don't know. Or you could choose Eagle Has Landed, and then, let's say, Ride Like the Wind. So it was like 3 types of songs. So who wants Sacrifice? Quiet, a couple of people clapped. Who wants Eagle Has Landed? And the crowd go, yay! Third song, people go, whatever it was, and polite applause. And Biff goes, right, we're playing Sacrifice. So it's like, I thought, right, no matter what the crowd says, you're getting Sacrifice, and then they played the Eagle Has Landed. Yeah, but he was. I thought Saxon were great, and I know when we, I think personally for a lot of the guys who organise, the Stone Dead Festival, Neil, Chris, and Louise, I know that Saxon's one of the bands that I think Chris has been wanting to get for years. So I can imagine that the guys were all, and with them being such a Donington theme and the bands played on, which is obviously about Monsters of Rock Donington. I'm sure the guys were all really chuffed about that. There's one band we forgot to mention, and which was the band called The Bites. They were a funny kind of band. They were quite sort of poppy, melodic. They kind of in that Journey sort of very, they weren't very metal at all, but their singer was pretty interesting. It was certainly an interesting pair of shorts.
Shorts.
Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah, absolutely. Blimey.
Yeah.
Thank God his T-shirt was quite long. That's all I can say. Yes, the bites, not to be confused with it bites, of
No,
course. So you quite like them, don't you?
I
You've
love
only
it
mentioned them a
bites.
few
I love it.
thousand times.
Yeah.
Shall we move on to
Yeah.
other news? Eric Bell. Now,
Ha!
didn't we who was he one of the founders of Thin Lizzy? I guess he
He
was, wasn't
named
he?
them.
Did he? Oh, did he? That's right.
He did.
Yeah.
He was the founder. Yeah, he named them Tin Lizzy from the magazine. It was either the Beano or the Dandy. Tin Lizzy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I don't know why they would name band after a comic book character, but I guess, it's been done since. But yes, anyway, so the 76-year-old Eric Bell, I was very interested when I read this story, and you'll hear why in a minute. So Eric Bell was born in Belfast, and he is receiving the honour of the annual Northern Ireland, you know where I'm going with this, don't you, Brian?
Yeah.
The Northern Ireland Music Prize Awards at Ulster Hall in November, which is lovely.
Yes.
He says I'm very basically he's very honoured to get the award, as you might imagine. And particularly in his hometown, of course, or home city of Belfast. Other recipients or previous recipients, not surprisingly, have been Gary Moore, one Sir Vivian of Campbell,
Yep.
Therapy, Stiff Little Fingers, and the Undertones. Several acts and guitarists that we've mentioned many times. There is someone missing from the list, though, Bri. A certain resident of Limavady, well, not now a resident of Limavady, but someone who was actually born in London, brought up in Limavady, plays the guitar a little bit, not very well, but he plays really, really good guitar. It's good to see. When are you going to get your recognition, Bri?
Well, as successful as our Slayer for Stone Dead campaign was, we'll have to do that for 2025. Maybe we have, Mealy for Legend. Hashtag Mealy for Legend. Mealy for Irish Legend.
Yeah. I think it's got a ring to it.
Yeah,
not.
I'll have to.
We'll have to work on the hashtag. But we will. We'll see what we can do.
Yeah, well deserved for Eric Bell.
Yes, indeed, and he's going to play at the event with his wonderfully named Eric Bell Trio.
There you go.
Oh, you saw, didn't you, recently?
I saw them on St. Patrick's Day. I saw them,
right.
and I met the man, and he signed one of my guitars.
Yeah. You told us,
all right,
that me and the 14 listeners.
Okay, fair enough.
At the time, you were so excited. Eric Bell. Yeah, good for you, Eric. Good luck with that. We should probably mention the Oasis reunion. Oasis is not a band we talk about very much on this podcast. I'm not sure we've ever mentioned the lovely Gallagher brothers in Oasis. But they've announced, obviously, I think the whole world knows that they've announced their reunion.
Yes.
Tickets went on sale recently, and then sold out immediately. And then, of course, there's uproar that they're all being resold here and there. I think the whole thing's gone mad. Resale seems to have gone. I mean, it seems to be worse than ever now.
Yeah.
The sort of the laughingly called secondary market, where basically you can charge anything. Dynamic pricing.
Yes.
For crying out loud.
Yeah.
Which I think is extremely unfair. I'm not sure who benefits. I don't think the band benefit particularly, but well, I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of it particularly, but when you see the numbers, racking up of the prices of tickets, I'm glad I wasn't inclined to go. You did actually try and get tickets, didn't you, Brian?
I did,
as usual.
Yeah,
I failed as usual.
Now that Oasis have joined that, I've now got a trio of gigs which I never got tickets for. So number one obviously was Led Zeppelin, number two Kate Bush, and number three now Oasis come in. But I read something on social media yesterday, Matt, which made me laugh. Where a father. A father put up on social media, he said, I queued for hours and hours and hours to get my daughter tickets for Taylor Swift. And now it's my turn to get tickets. Is she sitting at the computer at early hours of the morning queuing up to get tickets for me? I think not. And that made me laugh. But yeah.
Apparently you can get odds, quite generous odds. if you're a betting person. Quite generous odds that they're going to split up during the tour. Now, I think that's worth a cheeky fiver, to be honest with you.
There's actually one of the well-known betting firms they've actually given you odds on Oasis splitting up before the tour actually starts.
Oh, really? Oh, my goodness. It did make me... and if you got a ticket, well done. You're one of the... there are quite a few dates, and hopefully you got a ticket for a reasonable price if you did try and get on. It did make me think, though, Bri, and we talked about this in our very lengthy 4 hours today, wasn't it? Gee,
pre-production,
4 hour
absolutely.
Pre-production, double P. Our 4 hour pre-production discussion. What bands that with remaining members, as in living members, I should say. Yes. That was the stipulation.
Yes.
That we'd like to see reunite, and because of course you couldn't have the Beatles without John Lennon, clearly, or indeed George Harrison,
correct,
or indeed Led Zeppelin without John Bonham, and so on. So we thought, who would like to see reunionized?
Reunionized. There's a new word.
Yeah, I just made that up. Sounds good, doesn't it? It kind of works, doesn't it?
It does.
Reunited. Who wants to be reunited? You and I were on the same page with a couple. Let's just run through a few. Journey, of course, with Steve Perry.
Yeah,
that'd be good, wouldn't it? Not Joe Perry, his brother, but Steve Perry. Journey. We've said that many times. That'd be great, Steve. And there's a potential for that. Judas Priest with KK Downing would be nice. And Les Binks. I'm choosing Les Binks. Dave Holland's no longer with us, who played on British Steel and so on. Or even keep Scott Travis. But Les Binks, you could argue, was there early on, or indeed Simon Phillips. Of course, top of my list, I would genuinely love to see the original 4 members of Diamond Head back together. I think I'm pretty certain they're still alive, unless I missed something. But obviously, Brian Tatler, and now of Saxon, Sean Harris, Colin Kimberley, and Duncan Scott. Not to be confused with Duncan Scott, the Olympic swimmer, of course. They are 2 different people. So I would love to see, genuinely, of course, I would love to see Diamond Head. What have you got on your very sort of lengthy list? Brian spent a huge amount of time putting 57 names down on a list.
Yeah, and of course, you put all of these. You think about the internet blowing up and falling over, Ticketmaster falling over for bands.
With Diamond Head, absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
You struggle to get tickets for that.
Yeah, so the first one on my list is at Bites.
Yes, of course. Bites. Is that Francis Dunnery?
That's Francis Dunnery.
That's Francis Dunnery.
Francis Dunnery. Band. There's obviously Duran Duran. All members are still here, but for Duran Duran to get back together with Andy Taylor, who was the rock element of Duran Duran, would be lovely to see. And I know that Andy's written with Duran Duran. One that I would certainly pay to see, which would be. And they nearly did this a few years ago in Los Angeles, would be the original David Lee Roth Eat 'Em and Smile band, which would be... Now, that's something that would be a possibility because, now that Billy Sheehan's, his commitments with Mr. Big are finished, David Lee Roth's not really doing much. That would be... No. I would pay a lot of money to see that.
And who else in the band? Steve Vai and the guy who was the drummer? I forget.
Greg Bissonette.
Greg Bissonette, of course it was.
Yeah.
There's you never know. There's a potential for that. You mentioned REM when we were talking.
Yes. Yeah.
5 hour pre-production discussion earlier, and you mentioned REM. I don't think REM didn't really split up. They just stopped. Yeah. And there's a difference between splitting up and just stopping, or just firing someone and or someone leave. Anyway, but you could have REM on your list, of course, Brian.
And then, of course, Dire Straits with Mark. I think that would be one where dynamic pricing and Ticketmaster would blow up. The Jam with Paul Weller. XTC, all the members of XTC are still alive, and famously. They gave up touring Andy Partridge. They effectively became a Beatles type band, and they just did studio work. Skid Row, it always seems to come round, doesn't it, Matt? That Skid Row and Sebastian Bach. And who knows with dear old Black Sabbath. All of the
Yep.
original members are still alive, and we keep being told about, it's unfinished business that they haven't had that one last show with Bill Ward. So there are some of the reunions I had on my list in our 4-hour meeting.
Yeah. I was back to 4 hours, is it? I thought it was 5, but okay, yep. What else we got? One thing that I thought was quite interesting. Lemmy's ashes. I think this is on the national news, possibly. Lemmy's ashes are the great Lemmy, bass player, singer, Motorhead, of course. If you don't know who Lemmy is, where have you been for the last 50 years? Anyway, Lemmy's ashes are going to be kept in Rock City in Nottingham. They spent some time at the Bloodstock Festival, and as we know, that he did pass out some of his ashes in bullets to some of his friends.
Yeah.
Slash and one or two others, I think, of course. But I thought this is very typically Lemmy, in that the Lemmy sculpture, in which his ashes are now sort of stored in some safe deposit box, is made from tank parts and Harley Davidsons. Doesn't get more rock and roll than that, does it?
Doesn't
really?
at all.
Metal, and I like. I'm a great fan of recycling, of course. And that's the ultimate recycling, isn't it? Tank parts and bits of old Harley Davidsons. I hope they're old Harley Davidsons, not someone's like come out from McDonald's into the car park and found, a fender missing or something like that. Anyway, so that's an interesting one. If we're ever in Nottingham, we should go there, right? We should have done a pilgrimage last time we were in, well, we're at Stonehenge. Maybe we'll do it next year.
Yeah.
That's only up the road. Anyway, got anything else?
Yes, I think it's going to be interesting. Talking about bands getting back together and reunions. Watch this space for the month of September, Matt. Linkin Park have put some messages up on social media saying that that in early September they are going to announce something.
Yeah.
And now the well-known and well-named Derek Whibley from Sum 41 has come out very quickly and said, I'm not joining Sum 41. So I think he's.
I thought he was nailed on.
No, well, I thought he was, because he'd guested with him on a festival a few years ago, and he sounded great. But no, Derek's come out because he's got a memoir out of his rock and roll days. He's out selling his book at the moment. But Derek's come out and said, I ain't doing it. So it'd be interesting to see what's going to happen to Linkin Park, because Chester is going to be a big voice, big shoes to fill in Linkin Park. So,
The late,
watch
great
this
Chester
space.
Bennington, of course.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. I actually heard it was Derek Whibley, and then now if he's denying it, then maybe it's someone else. Who knows? Maybe we'll find out in due course.
So, Matt, we come to that part of the show, which is New Rock on the Block. And we have a couple of albums to review this episode. We've got Falling in Reverse and Elles Bailey's new album. Well, we kick off with Falling in Reverse. What did you think of this album? Popular Monster.
Yes. Well, a friend of mine at work, down at the slaughterhouse, down at the abattoir, recommended Falling in Reverse, and I thought I'll check them out. And it just happened to coincide with their sixth album. They formed in 2008. Essentially, they're one guy and a sort of band of musicians. Ronnie Radke. Yeah, sounds like he should have played for Hereford in the early 70s. If you know, you know. But Ronnie Radke, he's an interesting character, and this album is quite something. Popular Monster. Now, we've never talked about Falling in Reverse. In fact, I don't think we've ever kind of referenced them on this podcast, because the music is very interesting, very eclectic. the album, I would say, you mentioned Linkin Park earlier. There's all sorts going on. I wouldn't listen to it with Grandma, to be honest with you, because
No.
it talks about all sorts of issues regarding substance abuse and mental illness and so on and so forth, and very graphic, let's say.
Yeah.
But musically, I really enjoyed it. I listened to it this morning, Brian, when I was at the gym. Yes, I went to the gym.
Wow.
And I listened to it while I was on the treadmill. And I didn't downhill mode, of course, but it's still a mode. And I quite enjoyed it. I quite enjoyed it. It's tons of energy. It's a kind of an amalgam of Linkin Park. You mentioned earlier. There's a bit of Linkin Park in there. I think it's very Linkin Park in places. There's some Slipknot style sort of contrasting vocals. There's some Kid Rock style songs in there. Rappy type songs, and some. I mean, it's brutal stuff. Frankly, most of it. I mean, it's very metal. It's got one or two sort of light songs, but Prequel is the introductory song, which is quite a kind of an interesting kind of take on his view of the world. Popular Monster, All My Life features Jelly Roll.
Yeah.
That's quite a kind of a relief to get that song in number 3, because it's more of a kind of country song, and then it's back into more sort of brutal stuff with Voices in My Head and Bad Guy and Watch the World Burn. I mean, come on, they're not exactly love songs, are they? No. But that's Trigger Warning, Zombified, and so on. There is a re-recording of Last Resort at the end. What was that? That was Limp Bizkit, wasn't it? Last Resort.
Papa Roach.
Papa Roach, sorry, yeah. So my knowledge of that era is pretty rotten, but yeah, I on the whole, I haven't listened to it. I'd recommend it to take a listen. I mean, it's interesting stuff. It's metal, it's rap, it's got a bit, as I say, a little bit of country thrown in. So I would give it a kind of a gentle 6.5, 7 out of 10. Bry's now collapsing at my mark I've given it, because I'm not sure you were. Mind you, last time we did this, I thought you were gonna, you hated the album, and it ended up with I forget it was now, but it ended up being your album of the year.
Yeah.
So we shall obviously revisit that. But what did you buy more to call, of course, with your album of the year, or is your album of the year
so far? Yeah.
What did you think of this piece of work, Brian?
There are so many different. So musically, it is very, very, very diverse. As you say, it's got metal core, it's got rap metal. There are some of the heavier songs that you've talked about, and then it'll have this sort of like stab of Queen Muse harmony vocals. You know what I mean? And he does that kind of like that really guttural voice, the Lamb of God voice. But then there'll be this moment of just like wonderful clear harmonies. Just so musically very, very interesting, I have to say. It just was maybe a little bit too diverse for me. And when I listened to the album, when the standout song on the album, which I think is amazing, the reimagining of Papa Roach's Last Resort, that is by far the standout track on the album, and it shows off Ronnie's vocal range. He's such a stunning singer on that song. That some of the other tracks, which are where he's got collaborations with rap artists, etc., it's as if he can do the lot, and he does the lot, but it's a little bit too much for me. I like an album to be, I like an album to be interesting, but it was just too diverse for me, Matt. I was kind of going, I was struggling a little bit, but I when we look at the song of the year, the Last Resort, that's up there for me. That's that could be in the the way when Disturbed did Sound of Silence and just went viral. that has got the possibilities of doing that. And the Jelly Roll collaboration, the song "All My Life," it actually sounded a little bit like Sum 41, that kind of poppier new metal type things. So there's some interesting bits in it. I wouldn't be as kind to the 6.5 out of 10. I'd probably go more 4.5 to 5, and that would be very much based around two or three outstanding tracks, but the rest of it was just musically really interesting, but vocally just too mad for me.
Well, fair enough. In the words of Ron Burgundy, we'll agree to disagree.
We shall indeed.
Okay. So that was Popular Monster by Falling in Reverse. Which brings us to the latest album by Elles Bailey. You couldn't be further from Falling in Reverse with Beneath the Neon Glow. Did you enjoy? You must have enjoyed this.
I loved it.
Right up your Americana Avenue, isn't it?
It really is. It is. We're on Americana Drive, turning off onto Sheryl Crow Avenue, past Stevie Nicks' house, whatever you want to call it, as we drive up on a lovely sun-kissed evening with the radio on, listening to Laurel Canyon music. All of those analogies, Matt. It's a lovely sun-kissed, easy listen. The tracks on it. In terms of how I don't know about you with this album. That it's Elles is a great singer, and her songwriting is really, really good as well too. I don't give her. This is probably one of the first albums I've really taken to listen to Elles. To me, when I listen to this album, there's some really, really it's easy songs that open it up, Matt. The lead off tracks like "Enjoy the Ride." It eases into it, but it's the last 3 or 4 tracks where Elles singing, her songwriting, the back end of the album is just tremendous, and all of that Stevie Nicks, Sheryl Crow, comparisons. She has her own sound, and I think the last 3 or 4 tracks on the album, Matt, just are masterpieces. And I'm looking at it going, maybe it's just a Spotify generation where nobody really thinks about the track listing of albums. But if I had been looking at this album, Matt, I'd have been putting the last 3 tracks as the first 3 tracks on the album. It was just it was a pleasure. I listened to it. And I'm listening to the album, I'm going, oh no, this is really good. It's really good. And it's, hate to use the Olympics analogy of it comes to the last, you're handing the baton over and you've got Let It Burn, Love Yourself, and Turn Off the News, which are just tremendous songs. So I really, really like the album. It's a very, very strong 8.5, 9 out of 10 for me. I really, really enjoyed the album.
Wow. Very good. I would tend to agree with you. It's a slow burner. It does take a while to get going. I wasn't very keen on it when I first started listening to it because I suppose I listened to too much of Falling in Reverse. And I was feeling a bit battered when I came to this. It's kind of got that sort of roots rock, Americana vibe to it. And as you say, she's a fantastic singer.
Yeah.
Brilliant songwriter. 1972. I think it's a very clever song, one of those kind of songs reminiscing. I don't think she was around in 1972, to be honest with you, but I think she kind of yearns for that era when things were, dare I say, simpler. And
yeah.
there was no internet. There's only 2 channels and so on and so forth, or 3 channels, I should say, TV channels that is in the UK. My favourite song is of the album is you touched upon it, the last song, "Turn Off the News," which there's very interesting sentiment behind it. And in a way, kind of sort of taking a view of the world, and there's so much stuff going on that, in a way, you just basically want to turn it off and kind of bury your head under the pillow kind of thing. So very interesting album and very well written. It's made me kind of want to visit her back catalogue, not revisit because I've never listened to any other Elles Bailey albums, but certainly it's inspired me to listen to her previous 4 or 5 albums. So I enjoyed it. It's not my album of the year for sure, but it's certainly a really good listen, and one you can kind of put on in the background, and one you can have probably not workout, because I'm at the gym a lot, as you know, Bri.
Absolutely.
Probably not a workout album or set of songs. I've only just started going to the gym, by the way, for my bad knee, my arthritic knee. Too much information. Anyway, where were we? Yeah, so it's a good album. It's nice background music, got a nice vibe to it. And I recommend everyone go and listen to Beyond the Neon Glow by Elles Bailey. That was it. That's New Rock on the Block for this episode, Bri.
Is indeed.
So, Bri, we come to the letter W in the A to Z of rock.
We do indeed.
And I think, yes, thank you. I think there's no better place to start than The Who.
The what?
Oh, here we go. The Who. You remember that? You've seen The Who. Pete Townsend, Roger Daltrey,
I have indeed.
Keith Moon, John Entwistle, and so on. Wow, still going. Kind of, aren't they? Are they still going?
Kind of.
Or are they called it? Yeah, I mean, they formed in the early 60s and had an amazing career, amazing songs, iconic albums. There's really not much you can say about The Who, is there? I mean, what are they like live, Bri? I've never seen them. What are they like live?
They are amazing live. You know, I've seen them 3 or 4 times. I would probably say out of the Hyde Park concerts and shows that and I've been to a few with you, The Who put on the best ever Hyde Park outdoor show. When you've got a band that's able to go through the 60s, all their singles, you know, when you think of, you know, My Generation, Can't Explain, I Can See for Miles. In the 60s and in the in the 60s in general, it was all about singles, and Pete Townsend could write a single. Then The Who turned into this album band, and they're making rock operas, and you've got Quadrophenia, and you've got Tommy, which is an amazing album. And they just move through the, you know, when you look at a Who set list, it's just, you know, it won't get filled again. Goes down as the best scream of all time, as far as I'm concerned. Well, it's certainly up there with Bruce Dickinson's Scream. The Who, amazing band, Matt, love them, and still playing well. You know, Roger sounding great, and Pete Townsend playing a mean guitar.
Indeed,
good show.
Yeah, absolutely. 1964 they were formed, so I made that 60 years this year. Which is amazing. As you say, amazing legacy and fantastic albums, and it kind of span the genres really. Sort of a lot of folks associate them as being a kind of a mod band in the 60s, and certainly image-wise they were. And when I first sort of became aware of the Who in the sort of late 70s or mid to late 70s, I thought they were more sort of, you know, rock. You know, Roger Daltrey and his long hair and all the rest of it. And but yeah, as you say, kind of amazing band, amazing legacy, and long may they continue. Where do you want to go next, Bri? I think I know where you want to go next. But go there anyway.
David.
Yes. Speaking. Hello, darling.
Hello, darling.
David Covenants.
David Covenants. With the Whitesnake.
Fellows. Yes, indeed. We've mentioned Whitesnake 1 or 2 times on this podcast, haven't we? I was thinking about Whitesnake. Actually, I guess you know you're a fan. I'm certainly a fan of the early period. Having seen them in that kind of, well, a lot of people refer to as the kind of classic lineup with John Lord and Ian Pace, Benny Miles and Mickey Moody, and obviously Coverdale himself, probably Neil Murray, of course. And then they kind of went through the you know, that kind of hair metal period, didn't he, in the 80s, and you know, just recently called it a day. But you know, I'm stealing your thunder because you're really the Whitesnake fan amongst us.
I think when it comes to a band, Matt, particularly a band like Whitesnake, no matter who's in the band, and there has been a revolving door of Whitesnake, particularly guitar players, and in the years that they had. It all comes down to the songs for me. You look at the classic lineup, the ready and willing lineup, as I would call it. When you've got songs like "Fool for Your Lovin'," "Child of Babylon" from "Come and Get It," which is an amazing album. And then you can go into the early 80s before the revamp, and you've got Slide It In, which is bang. It's just packed with Slow and Easy. You've got Cozy Powell on drums. You've got John Sykes joins the band. They get a little bit more heavier, but it's all about the song. The songs are great on Slide It In. And then it just went stratospheric with the 1987 album, where Sykes and Coverdale just kind of that 1987 album just struck platinum, didn't it? There wasn't Still of the Night, Is This Love, re-recordings of Crying in the Rain, and then obviously the Enormo hit and Here I Go Again re-recorded. So again, all about the songs. And then and it probably just dipped a little bit for me when the Slip of the Tongue album came out, and that's when they started to become a little bit of a pastiche and bit of a parody of themselves. The tongue-in-cheek lyrics, tuning your G string up to A, which will go down as probably one of the worst lyrics ever. But
yes, indeed.
What more can we say about David?
Yes, well, David Coverdale, of course, and Whitesnake. As I was going through the list of bands, the W bands, it struck me that a lot of them, W was a very popular letter to use for your band name in the 80s. You got White Lion, of course, magnificent. Is it Vita Brata? The
amazing guitar player. Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant guitarist. Winger,
yes,
of course.
Red Beach.
Yeah, exactly. I think they're still. I mean, they're still kind of going as an entity. I think
they are. Yeah, very much.
They played the UK recently.
Yeah,
Kip Winger and Red Beach and the rest of them. Warrant, of course. Who they had a few decent songs.
They did. Johnny Lane had the biggest smile in rock, didn't they?
The late Janie Lane, but they had some decent songs. And then similarly with those kind of new rock of the early 90s, the Wild Hearts and Wolfsbane, of course.
Yeah.
Who I really quite liked. That's here. I met Blaze Bailey recently. Did I tell you? Did I tell anyone? I met Blaze Bailey at a festival. He's a lovely guy. Blaze Bailey being the singer of Wolfsbane and singer of Iron Maiden for a little while. I spent sort of 10 or 15 minutes chatting to him. Very nice guy.
Yeah, not only do you have lots of bands, somebody who, we're talking about Whitesnake, but somebody who has got white in their name and often gets maligned as a guitar player, certainly in the pantheon of guitarists in Thin Lizzy, is Snowy White. Snowy White, played guitar on 2 Thin Lizzy albums, Renegade and Chinatown, 2 very, very good Thin Lizzy albums, but he just was a blues player. He recorded very well with Thin Lizzy. There was never any problem with any of the musical output in the studio. I just don't think he was an out-and-out rocker with leather trousers and pulling shapes and a Les Paul. But Snowy White, and he went on to have a brief solo career in the top 10 with Bird of Paradise. And probably, and for me, probably, he played with Roger Waters for a number of years and his solo band. Snowy White deserves an honourable mention in RWs.
Very good, very good. By the way, thanks to everyone who made us suggestions on Facebook. We always appreciate that. And amongst those mentioned were the Waterboys. Of course.
Yeah.
Wow, what a band they were.
I thought they were Irish.
Are you asking me or telling me?
No, I thought they were Irish. No, they're Scottish. They're from Edinburgh.
That's right.
Yeah.
Whole of the Moon, of course, is probably one of the greatest songs ever written.
Yeah.
Amazing song. And then also one or two other folks mentioned Wishbone Ash.
If you
I
have
think
to.
I mentioned Martin Turner. I mentioned. I think last episode we talked about flying vehicles. Andy Powell was the flying V player in
He was.
Wishbone Ash, not Martin Turner. We've got coming up to date. We've got When Rivers Meet. An interesting band, husband wife fronted band, which is worth checking out. Along with The Warning, three sisters from Mexico who we saw at Steelhouse. They were also at Made of Stone. They're worth checking out. They've got some great songs, and they got a certain sort of appeal. Warlock was mentioned. We mentioned them earlier.
Yeah.
In the context of Doro, of course. What else you got, Bri?
Some guitar players to add into into the W's. Zach Wilde, who replaced Jakey Lee. I always remember the first single, "Miracle Man," which was just phenomenal. And
Jakey Lee with Ozzy Osbourne, of course.
Yes, that's right.
Yep.
But somebody who was a massive influence on Zach was Leslie West from Mountain, who actually, I think I'm right in saying that guitar-wise, Eddie Van Halen would talk about two guitarists that from a tone perspective and really influenced them was Eric Clapton and Leslie West, who's an amazing, Mississippi Queen's just a phenomenal song. And Stevie, Johnny Winter as well too, an amazing blues guitar player. His brother Edgar as well. Both of them with the long white hair. Steve Winwood, famously from Traffic, Blind Faith, and his own solo career in the mid-'80s. Still going well, probably a little bit more jazzier, even world music. And somebody who I have to mention in the W, which is John Waite. John Waite's an amazing vocalist who I think he's a phenomenal guitar player, a phenomenal singer with the work that he did both solo and with Bad English.
Yes, indeed. And the Babies, of course.
Oh, yes.
He says, pretending he knows something about John Waite. We must mention the Wilson sisters, of course, Anne and Nancy Wilson, and we wish Anne Wilson very well in her battle with cancer. I just want to mention Wembley Stadium and Wembley Arena. Quite often, as we've discussed many times, the only date on a UK tour that forms part of a world tour, of course. I've been to Wembley Stadium many times. One of my favourite gigs there was the Joshua Tree, U2, back in 1987. We touched upon that a few episodes ago. I think in the context of the letter U. Songs-wise, we've got a few of those. Albums-wise, we've got too many to mention. White Wedding and Wishing Well and Who Made Who and Wild in the Streets by Diamond Head and also by Bon Jovi. The Wild, Willing and Innocent by UFO, I should say, and so on. What else you got for us, Bri?
You've got Pink Floyd. Yeah, we got Pink Floyd's The Wall. We would get lynched if we didn't mention The Wheels of Steel by good old Saxon, Wild Frontier by Gary Moore, and Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd. Yeah, we could have done a double episode of W's. There was so many things that we could have gone with.
Indeed, a double album with a gatefold sleeve, just like Wishbone Ash. Right, that was W. So, Brian, that brings us to the final part of episode 70.
Hidden Gems Eyes.
Thanks, Lola. Sounding great, as always. What you got for us, Brian?
You mentioned Eric Bell at the beginning of the show, Matt.
I did.
You did indeed.
Well remembered.
From Northern Ireland. And I am going with a band from Northern Ireland, from Downpatrick. This is a real hidden gem for me. This is an album from 2001. The album is called Wildflowers, and it's a band called Relish. Now, it's a Relish, great band. Had some pretty heavy duty patronage or patronage, if you're for our US listeners.
Either.
They got some real heavy hitting patronage from Brian May, Larry Mullen Jr. and U2. Whenever U2 played Slane Castle in the early 2000s, I think Relish were on the bill, and a couple of the guitar player. The guitar player ended up playing with Sinead O'Connor in her touring band, as well as Paul Weller. So the band are Relish, and the album is Wildflowers. Couple of tracks, Matt, to put on the playlist for this episode. If you can put on Rainbow Zephyr, and my earworm track of this week, which is a track called Heart-Shaped Box. Now, it's not to be confused with Nirvana's Heart-Shaped Box. Okay. So my hidden gem for this episode is Wildflowers by the band Relish.
Very good.
What have you got?
I'll check them out. You get these. You pull these out from nowhere, don't you? Just out of the ether. So mine's an EP. I'm not sure we've ever done an EP actually. When I was getting ready to go to Stone Dead Festival and see Paul Di'Anno, who I hadn't seen since 1981, my first gig. Iron Maiden on the Killers tour. I've mentioned that many times. But it inspired me to revisit the early Maiden catalogue. Basically, the first album, Iron Maiden, and the second album, Killers. The only two albums he did with the band. But he also did, and this is my hidden gem for this week, there was also, in between those two albums, in May 81, Maiden brought out Maiden Japan, a 4-track EP recorded in, surprise, in Japan. And it's worth checking out because there's not much live material featuring Paul Di'Anno. There's obviously plenty of live albums featuring Bruce Dickinson over the years, but not much featuring Paul Di'Anno. So, my hidden gem for this episode is Made in Japan from 1981. Features Running Free, Remember Tomorrow, Killers, and Innocent Exile. So a nice kind of split of tracks from both the first two Iron Maiden albums. And it takes you back to that era when everyone toured Japan, and EPs were fairly regular on the shelves. And at the time, I was absorbing everything Iron Maiden, and this I remember was no exception. So Made in Japan by Iron Maiden from 1981 is my hidden gem for this episode, Brian.
There you go.
That's it.
Boom.
So that was episode 70. And that, in fact, is the last for those about to pod we're going to be doing for a while. We're pausing the podcast because we've got some very exciting news to share with you in due course. Brian and I are moving on to other ventures together, still staying together.
Yeah.
And we will tell you all about it in due course. So check out our Facebook page. We'll also be inundating you with messages and information and news. But very, very shortly, we'll have some very exciting news for everyone regarding the next phase of our career, let's say, Brian. So without further ado, thank you all for listening. Thanks to Scotland Rocks Radio for having us for the last year or so. Thanks to everyone for listening on the last 70-odd episodes. Thanks to all the bands that have been part of this and we've interviewed. Thanks for all the comments on Facebook. It's not really goodbye, though, because we will be back. We'll be back very soon. And
yes.
As I say, we'll be letting you know in due course when everything kind of is wrapped up. But for now, thanks very much for listening. We'll speak to you all soon. Goes Back to Pod, we salute you is a Made in Rogers production.